Picture this. You're standing right there inside this massive, incredibly realistic stadium down in Houston. The air is just absolutely thick with anticipation. Bright, piercing stadium lights are cutting straight through the warm Texas evening. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down a truly historic clash from Group E of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. On one side, you've got a footballing titan, hungry to reclaim its former glory. And on the other, a tiny island nation taking its very first steps onto the globe's absolute biggest sporting stage. What unfolded under those lights was a match of incredible contrast, breathtaking moments, and a final result that is definitely going to be etched into the record books.
7-1. Just let that number sink in with you for a second. It's a staggering scoreline, right? When you see a huge margin like that at a World Cup, it usually tells two very different stories at the exact same time. On one hand, it captures this cold, calculated, and deeply necessary redemption for a heavy favorite that really had something to prove. But on the other hand, buried right there within that completely lopsided final tally is an immense, unforgettable Caribbean triumph.
Okay, let's dive into this, because to really appreciate what happened out there, you have to understand the monumental David versus Goliath disparities between these two nations. On one side, you have Germany, a footballing superpower, four-time world champions. I mean, this is a team that fully expects to be in the final, let alone making it out of the group stages. And on the other side, Curaçao. By literally just stepping onto that pitch, they officially became the absolute smallest country to ever appear in a World Cup tournament. We are talking about the ultimate underdog going head-to-head with an established titan.
And you know, the contrast wasn't just happening on the pitch, it was right there on the touchline too. We're talking about a historic 40-year age gap between the managers. You've got Germany's Julian Nagelsmann, who at 38 years old is actually the youngest coach in this entire 2026 tournament. Squaring off against him is Curaçao's manager, Dick Advocaat, who at 78 years old just became the oldest coach in World Cup history. So you have two completely different generations of tactical minds clashing right there in Houston. Now, as you'd probably expect, Germany wasted absolutely zero time asserting their dominance. Just 6 minutes into the match, Felix Nmecha takes an assist from Florian Wirtz and fires this right-footed shot straight into the near post. 1-0 Germany. Business as usual, right? Pretty much everyone in the stadium assumed the floodgates were going to immediately open. But then, we reach the 21st minute, and suddenly, everything changes. Out of nowhere, the underdog pushes forward.
Livano Comenencia finds himself right in the center of the box. It is totally crowded, absolute traffic all around him, but he just unleashes this left-footed strike. Imagine the hyper-detailed texture of that ball spinning, cutting straight through the German defense and slamming right into the back of the net, 1-1. For a fleeting, completely magnificent moment, the smallest nation in World Cup history actually ties a four-time champion. The breathless frenzy of the Curaçao fans just erupting in the stands. I mean, it was a moment of pure sporting magic, securing their very first tournament goal. The sheer euphoria of that exact moment was perfectly captured by Curaçao's Gerald Margarita. He said, "Even though it wasn't me, it felt like it was me. It was all of us, the whole island, everybody. We screamed our lungs out, so we were happy." Can you feel that? Just the pure, unadulterated joy radiating from those words. For that tiny Caribbean nation, that single, solitary goal meant the absolute world to them. It completely validated every single second of their long journey just to get to this tournament.
But unfortunately for the underdog, that joy was pretty short-lived. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just short-lived. That momentary equalizer didn't rattle Germany at all. It woke them up. The German machine, cold, precise, and entirely unforgiving, just weakened. The momentum on the pitch shifted completely, and from that exact point forward, the pressure became absolutely suffocating. What followed was just an unanswered barrage of goals. 38th minute, Nico Schlotterbeck connects with a header. Boom! Right into first half stoppage time, 45+5. Kai Havertz buries a penalty. Boom! Out of the locker room, 47th minute, Jamal Musiala. 68th, Nathaniel Brown. 78th, Deniz Undav. 88th, Havertz strikes again. It was just relentless, unforgiving, total, undeniable control.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the stage we're talking about here. Picture 68,021 fans totally packed into that Houston stadium. And yeah, while there was a deeply spirited, incredibly loud contingent there cheering for Curaçao, the overwhelming majority of that massive crowd was rooting for Germany, just roaring with every single wave of that 6-goal barrage.
Meanwhile, way down on the completely isolated other end of the pitch, almost entirely removed from all those offensive fireworks, stood Manuel Neuer. You kind of have to picture the sweat on this 40-year-old veteran's brow. He came all the way out of international retirement specifically for this tournament, marking his very first appearance for Germany in almost 2 years. Yet, because of Germany's absolutely overwhelming possession, he was barely even tested. He recorded just a single solitary save all night long. So after the final whistle finally blew, Julian Nagelsmann was really clear about the psychological weight of this match. He told reporters, "We really needed this convincing win. I think we're in a better spot than we were entering this match." And honestly, he's absolutely right. We have to remember the context here. Germany is desperately seeking redemption. They need to bury the ghosts of those pretty disastrous group stage exits in Russia and Qatar. They needed a massive statement win to prove to their fans, and really to themselves, that the confidence is finally back.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the historical context. Look, 7-1 is a blowout, for sure, no question about it. But surprisingly, it actually falls well short of the World Cup record for a margin of victory. The record is an incredible 9 goals, which has actually happened 3 different times in history. The most recent, 1982, when Hungary absolutely demolished El Salvador with a staggering score of 10-1. So as painful as it looked on the scoreboard for Curaçao, it historically could have been a lot worse.
Let's take a step back and look at the Group E standings, now that the opening round is in the books. Germany, as you'd guess, sits right at the top with 3 points and a massive +6 goal differential. But right on their heels is Ivory Coast, matching those 3 points following a super dramatic late win over Ecuador in Philadelphia. Ecuador sits in third with 0 points and a -1 differential, while Curaçao anchors the bottom with 0 points and a pretty tough -6 differential.
So what are the next steps for these squads as we look ahead? On Saturday, Germany travels all the way up to Toronto to face Ivory Coast. It's going to be a massive test that will prove if they are truly back on track, just as Nagelsmann cautiously reminded everyone. Meanwhile, Curaçao travels to Kansas City to meet Ecuador. Both of those teams are going to be fighting absolutely desperately for their first points of the tournament to keep their World Cup dreams alive. Which brings us to the ends of today's explainer, and it leaves us with a really critical thought as we envision that glittering golden World Cup trophy waiting at the end of this tournament. Look, Germany did exactly what they needed to do against a historic underdog. But the question remains, will this resounding 7-1 victory finally exorcise Germany's group stage demons? Or is the hardest part of their redemption tour still waiting for them in the matches to come? Keep that in mind as we watch the rest of Group E unfold.